We got married on a Friday afternoon on June 28th, 2013. It was 104 degrees as the ceremony began at 6 p.m., but Marlene and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. It was perfect. We exchanged vows, we celebrated with friends, we danced, and we ended up with enough money to fund our honeymoon since that's what we'd asked for as wedding gifts. People obliged, and a few days later we were on our way from Ontario
Here we go.
to San Francisco to Berlin. It was Marlene's first time leaving the country. I'd been to Germany a handful of times before, but this time was different. I was with someone I loved. We battled jet lag our first day in Berlin after arriving in the middle of the day. The next morning we headed to Checkpoint Charlie because Marlene and I share a love of seeing historical stuff. Hungry for breakfast, we went to a traditional little German restaurant near the Cold War Museum. It's like the McDonald's from Sprockets. We hopped on one of those get-on, get-off tour buses that you take around whatever city you're visiting. Our first stop was Brandenburg Gate. I've married you and taken my pictures with Mario and Luigi here in front of the Brandenburg Gate. This has been a very good week.
Very good week.
Yes, indeed. Then we went to Charlottenburg Palace, a Baroque 17th century estate with lots of crown jewels and royal silver and fine porcelain. It was Marlene's happy place. She loved it. We spent a lot of time before and after sightseeing at the Impala Cafe near our hostel. It was there that I took this, probably my favorite ever picture of my Marlena. We headed out one morning to Sachsenhausen concentration camp. That's the sort of thing teachers do. I know it sounds weird, especially on our honeymoon, but it's what we wanted to do. This place seemed haunted. We left Berlin the next day, our first time using the Eurail passes I'd ordered back in America many months earlier. We had like 10 days of travel almost anywhere in Europe during a 30-day period, and I had it worked out that we would use the first day of eligibility leaving Berlin that day and the last day going to Paris a month later. We changed trains in Munich and continued southish towards Füssen, site of Neuschwanstein Castle, which is someplace I'd always wanted to go, and a place Marlene was super excited about. This part of Bavaria all seemed very fairy tale-ish, with the forests and castles. Hohenschwangau Castle was our first stop, and it was a great table setter for Neuschwanstein. It was the summer residence of King Ludwig II. What did you think?
It was beautiful.
After touring that castle, it was a healthy walk over to Neuschwanstein Castle, which was the inspiration for Sleeping Beauty's castle in beautiful Anaheim, California. Disneyland versus here. Compare and contrast. Go.
This courtyard is much bigger. The towers are much higher. It's much grander than Disneyland, although Disneyland is the happiest place on earth.
Sorry, folks. There's no filming inside of the castle. The sign out front should have told you. I'm coming to get you, Marlene. Back in Munich, we walked around the old town center part and went to an old 16th century church. We also saw a lot of stuff that seemed pretty, Illuminati-ish, but I probably shouldn't tell you about that. So I'll just say that they had a large selection of cured meats at this outdoor marketplace. It was 4 months till Oktoberfest, but it was still pretty lively there, and Marlene found plenty of souvenirs to buy. We loved our hotel in Munich. It was in a lovely part of town and had great wall art. But nonetheless, we had to leave because our train was leaving for Innsbruck. We stayed right next to Innsbruck's famous Golden Roof, which was, as I'm sure you already know, completed in 1500 and decorated with 2,657 fire-gilded copper tiles for Emperor Maximilian I to mark his wedding to Bianca Maria Sofara. So guess who forgot to bring any sort of head covering to Europe? The only thing I could find in a Munich department store that would fit my big-ass noggin was this generic blue cap, which you'll be seeing for the rest of the trip. And the oldest daughter came to our hotel to pick us up in her comedically small car and take us to the venue. It was very fun seeing the music that's probably the music of my people somewhere in the past. If they'd had outfits my size in the gift shop, you know I would have not only come home with one, but I would have worn it for the rest of our stay in Austria. Too bad.
The hills are alive with the sound of music, with songs they have sung for 1,000 years. The hills fill my heart with the sound of music. My heart wants to sing every song.
We purchased an Innsbruck pass when we arrived in the city, and it had gotten us a great deal on admission to the funicular and the dinner show. And on our last day in Austria, we went to the Swarovski Crystal Worlds Museum on the outskirts of town. It was so blingy. Marlene had found another happy place there in the heart of Europe. Late that afternoon, we hopped on another train and headed off to Italy, which was the first place Marlene had said she wanted to visit when we started planning this honeymoon excursion. First stop in Italy, Venice. I had avoided going to Italy on my previous trips, but because it had always seemed too romantic of a place for me to go alone. And let me tell you, Venice was. I was so glad to be there with the love of my life. I love you.
I love you too, Ben. Let's go.
I bought this sassy new hat in Venice so I wouldn't have to wear that generic blue one every day. We took water taxis around and saw cool stuff, and weird stuff, and historic stuff, like St. Mark's Square, which was surprisingly empty. Yeah, right. And Marlene found plenty of great places to shop. We had a great time in Venice, and I can't wait to go back, provided that global warming doesn't submerge the entire city before we get a chance to visit again. Tell me about Venice.
Venice is romantic. It's breathtaking. It's gorgeous. I love how the canals are all connected with bridges and how you can easily get lost if you make a wrong turn. But it is quite extraordinary. Roma.
The weather in Rome was like the weather back home, hot and dry. But when in Rome, walk around a bunch and buy bottled water every chance you get. Are you not entertained?
Hi, Ben.
I love you, Marlene.
I love you too.
Mwah.
Mwah.
Welcome to Ben's House of Statues, your one-stop shopping for all your statue needs. What do you need? We can do it for you. Look at this. You need something with a snake? We got that. You need something with an emperor? We got that. You need something with a shield? We've got that. Act now and refer this one in for free. Act now, Ben's House of Statues.
I got mine at Ben's House of Statues.
Ask about our special delivery options. The next morning, we put on some nice clothes and hurried over to the Vatican for our 8 a.m. tour. There were already 10 zillion people there because it's the Vatican. Let's not cuss. Let's not cuss. Our tour leader had to take care of some official Vatican business or something, so she left Marlene in charge of holding the little flag. Marlene used her teacher or two to do a great job, which came as no surprise. That's my wife. I'm so proud of you, honey. The Vatican was great, and I'm not even Catholic. There were exhibits and statues and tapestries, and the audio tour was narrated by the Pope himself. "Hey, welcome to my house," he said. I don't know why he was Italian all of a sudden. That reminds me, we'd rented an apartment in central Rome, and all my correspondence with the landlord, Mario, in the months leading up to our honeymoon had made me wonder if he would talk like Super Mario when we got around to meeting him. He did not. Back to the Vatican, lots of historic stuff, and scenes that Marlene had grown up seeing on Christmas Eve services. Hey, it's St. Peter's Square. St. Peter's Basilica, at least this new version of it, only dates back to 1626. The original, on the same site, had been built in the 4th century by Constantine the Great. It was cool inside St. Peter's Basilica. They had a Michelangelo sculpture, all sorts of decorative cherubs, the preserved body of Pope John XXIII, which was one of 91 total popes buried under the basilica, and St. Peter's Baldachin, which is the largest bronze sculpture in the entire world. So there were all these signs saying no photos are allowed in the Sistine Chapel. I thought about doing it anyways, a lot, but ultimately didn't even try to snap any photos of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, so I had to settle for a refrigerator magnet of Michelangelo's creation of Adam. I didn't want to incur the wrath of the Pope, Marlene, or the dreaded Swiss Guard.
We're at the Vatican. We're at the Vatican.
Nice photobomb, lady. Thanks for doing that.
It was beautiful. I had a wonderful time. I hope to visit it again, not so soon, but in my lifetime another time. Definitely the St. Peter's Basilica. It was enormous, it was gorgeous, it was everything I thought it would be, and very emotional.
And Marlene found plenty of stuff to buy in the gift shop. We took a 2-hour train ride from Rome down to Pompeii the next day. It was hot. We got worn out walking around all afternoon, but it was cool to see Roman life as it existed before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The next day was a day we'd been waiting for. We had tickets to see Depeche Mode at Stadio Olimpico in Rome. Just us and 70,000 fellow fans.
Situations like these.
We bade farewell to Mario and left our Rome apartment the next morning. I resisted the urge to say he and Luigi should look us up if they were ever in California. On the train to Florence, Marlene spent some time talking with some old grandmother types. They could almost understand each other because of the Romance language similarities of Spanish and Italian. Florence is the biggest city in Tuscany. It's where Marlene had originally suggested we go on our honeymoon. She'd long been drawn to its beauty and romantic scenery. I'd figured why not spend a week in Tuscany? But add 2 weeks before that somewhere else, and 2 weeks afterwards that visiting even more places. Florence was filled with historic charm and museums, and I especially enjoyed one pair of knockers I saw there.
Playing with my eyes, velvet tongue so sweet. Say anything you like.
We only stayed one night in Florence, though, as I'd rented us a room in a villa out in the Tuscan countryside. We picked up our rental car at the Florence airport and set out, me behind the wheel of a manual transmission for the first time in like 13 years. Well, it would have maybe been cooler to cruise around Italy in a Fiat convertible or something. We did just fine in our Ford Focus.
Love is paradise. Love is paradise.
We stayed 5 nights in San Gimignano, a medieval castle town in the Tuscan countryside. Actually, we stayed at a bed and breakfast called Agriturismo Natura e Salute, which was 4 miles down a dirt road off the main road through San Gimignano. It took me all 5 nights to figure out how to say San Gimignano correctly, and I never was able to do it without gesturing with pinched fingers in a bad, stereotypically Italian way. Every day, we set out on adventures from our home base. Having our own transportation gave us the opportunity to stop wherever we wanted, including Volterra, which Marlene said was the name of a town that played a key part in the Twilight series. Tuscany was as scenic as Marlene had dreamt it would be, and we had a great time driving around, seeing whatever. At night, we swam in the pool and watched the evening grow darker and darker out there in the middle of nowhere. The next day, we went to Siena and saw more castles and artwork and museums. We also went to the Museum of Torture, although I don't know if that was in Siena or San Gimignano, since they both had one. Either way, Marlene got a kick out of it, possibly too much of a kick. I made sure to behave myself for the rest of the trip. And Marlene found plenty of places to go shopping.
Love is paradise.
I loved driving around the Tuscan countryside in the encroaching darkness. I mean, as long as I had a car, even if it was a Ford Focus, we liked just getting out and seeing what we could see. Each night's adventure ended with us driving down that scary, dusty, desolate road back to the bed and breakfast. We left San Gimignano and drove to a little town called Vinci. It was named after a famed Renaissance man, Sergei Brukhenko. I may be wrong about that. It's been a while since we were in Tuscany. In Pisa, we parked the car outside of our lovely hotel near the train station, where the front desk people took great pains to make sure we had taken anything and everything of value out of the car if we were going to park it on the street overnight. At the Leaning Tower, we took the obligatory shots, wherein you stand at a distance from the tower and act like it's leaning towards you. I think it's some sort of local law. We turned in our car at the Florence airport the next morning. It had been a great almost week of driving around in the Ford Focus. We had reservations to tour the Uffizi and the Galleria dell'Accademia, where there were these signs saying not to take pictures of Michelangelo's David, but I guess I didn't see those signs. We left Italy before I got in trouble for taking those photos and headed to Switzerland. Our first stop was Zermatt, home of the Matterhorn, which Marlene wasn't able to see because of the summer storms. And my wife was bummed, but we had fun in this little alpine village nonetheless. We took the Gornergrat Railway up to over 10,000 feet high, where it was cold and snowy, and we could see the 8-mile-wide Gorner Glacier.
This trip needs more cowbell.
In Lauterbrunnen the next day, the bad weather wasn't up in the mountains, but was down in the town itself. Rain, rain, go away. Ben and Marlene, I want to go outside and play. Can rain keep us down, Marlene?
No.
Heck no, let's go do something. You got that umbrella?
Right here.
Yay! Despite the rain, we went out exploring. We went to Trommelbach Falls, where there's like 10 glacier-fed waterfalls cascading down inside of a mountain. You can take an elevator up and down, and we took it up but then walked down very carefully. We went up the Jungfraubaum Railroad to the 11,332-foot high station that is the highest train station in Europe. So here's what it should have looked like from up atop the Jungfrau-Joch station, which you get to by taking a steep train tunnel through many miles of alpine mountain. So it should have been all scenic, but it was Hoth-like outside, and we couldn't see anything. So we just had some hot chocolate and looked out the windows and started back down towards Lauterbrunnen.
Here, Cowie, Cowie, Cowie. Here, Cowie, Cowie, Cowie.
Here comes one. Right. I take my position as the Inland Empire's premier bovine photographer very seriously.
You're so late, Ben.
I love you too, honey. I'd been to Paris one other time, alone, on a previous trip through Europe. It had been so beautiful, so drizzly and rainy, with the soft lights reflected on the dewy, wet streets as I'd dined alone, and I'd hated it. Now, 4 years later, I was there with my true love, and Paris's beauty was embraced by both of us with open arms.
Hold me close and hold me fast. the magic spell you cast. This is La Vie en Rose. When you kiss me, heaven sighs, and though I close my eyes, I see La Vie en Rose. When you press me to your heart, and in a world apart, a world where roses bloom. And when you speak, angels sing from above. Everyday word seems to turn into love song.
I swear the host on this riverboat tour could have been my long-lost son. Imagine me with hair.
Always bleed, La Vie en Rose.
Paris was beautiful as we went around for a few days, but the city's crowding moment came when, after dinner in a romantic restaurant, we walked around outside after our meal and the Eiffel Tower was lit up and sparkly. It was romantic, it was epic, it was perfect. The sixth and final country we visited on this honeymoon extravaganza was England. I didn't want a photo of me just walking across the famous crosswalk, so Marlene obliged and got a bunch so I could recreate the album cover.
You are crazy.
So the British Museum. I don't want to be a negative Nelly because I love museums, but the British Museum kind of really struck both of us with the sheer magnitude of plunderage.
Dirty old river, must you keep rolling, flowing into the night. People so busy.
They had stuff from every corner of the world on display.
Light shines so bright, but I don't need no friend as long as I gaze on Waterloo sunset, I am in paradise. Every day I look at the world from my window, but chilly, chilly is the evening time. Waterloo sunset time. Waterloo sunset time. Waterloo Station every Friday night. But I am so lazy, don't want to wander, I stay at home at night. But I don't.
The Pope hadn't narrated the Vatican tour, but I'd hoped the Queen would be the voice doing the audio on the Buckingham Palace tour. Hello! Thank you for coming to my castle! She wasn't. Oh well.
You know what my favorite part of visiting Buckingham Palace was?
What then?
The royal throne.
Chilly, chilly is evening time. Waterloo sunset's fine. Millions of people swarming like flies round Waterloo underground. But Terry and Julie cross over the river, where they feel safe and sound.
We'd been married for 6 weeks by the time we set out from our London hotel for Heathrow on the last morning of our honeymoon trip. It had been everything we'd hoped for. We were flying back to Ontario with a connection in Calgary, Canada. But the flight from London was delayed, so we got to Calgary too late. British Air offered us a hotel in Calgary and a flight to Ontario the next day, but we wanted to go home, so we went to LAX instead. It had been a great trip, spent with my true love, my best friend, my wife. I couldn't wait to go on another.